What do we provide students at Penn State? What's it mean to get a Penn State education? When I was in college, I understood my education to be the courses that I was taking. Other than that, there wasn't a tremendous amount. I had a job. A lot of students had jobs, and I had a social life. I did have some campus activities, though, that were very important to me. One of those activities gave me some moments outside the classroom that I'll never forget. And the professor who was the advisor to that writing group that I belonged to at my undergraduate institution, he was somebody very important to me. So, as a faculty member at Penn State, I've always wanted to make sure that as many students as possible would have some kind of outside the classroom action or activity that was a substantial part of their education. I think that the civil rights story is a great way to understand American culture. You know, you can learn so much about so many things just by studying this one particular story.
What I think is cool about this, among many other things, remember how it started with that sweep of history at the beginning. Then it closes by circling back on this.
Taking it out of the classroom is beneficial because there's no textbook that can tell you how close Dexter Avenue Baptist Church was to the governor's mansion, and how Dr. King could look out of his study and see the governor's mansion. It enhances the educational experience in a way that can't be related through words.
Many of the students had not been to Washington, D.C. before, so they were thrilled to get to the Lincoln Memorial, to stand in the place where King gave his famous address on August 28, 1963.
Standing right where it says, "I have a dream." And I remember thinking back to when we had learned about the speech, and of course it's one of the most well-known speeches, but just standing there and looking out, that was one of the most powerful moments of the trip for me.
After reading the speeches and going through the rhetoric in the Civil Rights Movement course, going to DC and going to the exhibit at the Smithsonian that was 1863 to 1963, so basically slavery to the Civil Rights Movement, that was really powerful because it was crazy to walk, you know, through one aisle of that exhibit and see, you know, what slave masters used and the tactics that slaves had to use in order to escape and retaliate, and then crossing over to the other side and seeing how the movement leaders were able to gather together and really make progress.
Going to DC before this is kind of, you know, you kind of go with like your 8th grade class or something and you kind of appreciate the monuments and everything. But there was something so special about sharing it with my classmates, you know, people that I've, you know, been with for a whole semester and that we've really like dug into this work with. And one thing that really stuck out to me was the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. You know, that's one of my favorite sites in DC. And I'd been there before, but it was so different to be able to, you know, stand there with my classmates and kind of just look up at the quotes along the wall behind the monument and just kind of experience that and take it in as a group. I think that was really special for all of us. So standing outside of F.W. Woolworth's in downtown Greensboro was really special because, you know, you see so many pictures of it, and then to finally be standing there in front of something so historic, something so special, you know, to the Civil Rights Movement, where this, you know, the lunch counter sit-in started, was really special. You know, it's almost tangible. You can almost sense what, I mean, certainly we can't expect to know like what it was like, but we really get a sense of what people were going through and just kind of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes a little bit better.
Now, once we got to Greensboro, you know, it was all about learning. I thought we were going to learn about those sit-ins. But when we got to the beloved community center, our major stop in Greensboro, the people there who were offering a program for us explained that there was much more to Greensboro than the sit-ins.
This isn't a teacher talking through a textbook. This is someone giving you kind of as close to a first-hand account of what's going on as can be, or as possible.
Police thought that I was the most militant person in the world. They had no idea that I was struggling with my comrades and friends to let's handle this in a different way.
I think one of the things that really affected me was just knowing that the story goes beyond the faces that we see. It goes beyond Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Malcolm X. There are unspoken heroes like Reverend Nelson and other people that worked behind the scenes and kept the movement going. And I didn't really think about that until this class. Like I was saying, you know, when you're in the classroom, it's like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, I have a dream, you know, everything's great. But you don't hear about the people that really stood behind the leaders and gave them their voices.
This is all Morris Brown College, and the procession, that funeral procession, Dr. King, went under this bridge.
Tom Houck, a former SNCC worker, now living in Atlanta. We had the good fortune of having him to show us, to give us a tour, a historical tour of Black Atlanta.
Martin Luther King was 14 years old. His father knew the owner.
We got the best tour, I think, possible. So we saw all the big landmarks. We saw Morehouse College. We saw, you know, SCLC's headquarters. We saw where Dr. King bought his cigarettes. But, oh, and I guess people don't usually know that. I guess people wouldn't know that unless you're with someone like Tom.
4 or 5 hours that he squired us around Atlanta were spectacular in helping us to understand the urban environment that King worked in, not just when he was active in the civil rights movement, but from his boyhood, because Tom Houck also showed us where he worked in the summers, where he went to grade school. He took us to Washington High School, where King went to school, all the way through college, because he showed us Morehouse and Spelman and Clark Atlanta universities. So we got just a tremendous tour of this very interesting urban environment.
I loved it because it reminded me of Martin Luther King. I feel like that was like the theme of Atlanta, was this is where he grew up. I think we often forget that he was a human being like the rest of us. We often picture him as this figure that gave great speeches and dedicated his life to service, which he did, but he was also a human being that just wanted to live a great life.
When you're in a classroom and you're learning about the civil rights movement, you don't hear a lot about those background stories, but they add life to the people that you're learning about.
Well, Montgomery is a key stop because you have it as the incubator for the Montgomery bus boycott. Then it was a stop on the Freedom Rides, and then it was the final, it was the destination in the Selma to Montgomery March. So it was a very key spot.
I do think Montgomery was like, we were all sort of like shooken, because I think DC, it was like, okay, we're seeing some things, you know, Atlanta is like, oh, Martin Luther King, and then we get to Alabama and it's like Confederate flags, here's where slaves were auctioned off. Like, it was very real to see the intersection of the civil rights movement and the Civil War.
People sort of dream, they wish that they could have been at a particular thing, you know. whether it's living at the time of Christ or living at the time of the American Revolution, or wouldn't it have been great to have heard Abraham Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address? Well, for Americans my age, the march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965 was the moment, the time and place where we'd most like to have been.
So it's on my right now, that red brick building all the way to the last yellow building. All of those were the warehouses for the slaves.
I was extremely upset when I arrived at Selma. Selma was like the slap in the face. Like, it was very confrontational. I mean, we were driving through and I saw homes that looked like slave plantations. You know, like I saw these homes that I could imagine what went on inside.
The cemetery did leave a mark on me from the trip, just because it's like crazy to see the segregation that exists in cemeteries even.
Among all the negativity, we were fortunately able to meet some Freedom Foundation members, and basically they are striving to help equalize the neighborhood and try to stop all the segregation.
The Freedom Foundation was going back in time for me. It reenacted the activism that my friends and I had been engaged in during the Vietnam War. We gathered in the church basement. We mingled with other college students, playing ping pong, listening to music, playing games, and then you have a communal meal, very unpretentious, and then an evening performance of a very serious nature, designed to really rouse people into positive action.
I'll do whatever it takes to set me free. I do everything to get what I need. I do whatever it takes to set me free.
Freedom Foundation in Selma was so inspiring to so many of us that we kind of felt it was our moral obligation to bring it back to Penn State. So we're going to be starting a branch of the Freedom Foundation here at Penn State, and we're going to be working as a liaison between the university and the Freedom Foundation in Selma, and we're going to be raising money to help them with existing projects, as well as kind of doing our own thing here to help spread awareness about the gross inequality that still exists in our world.
The time is now or never. Nothing lasts forever.
We'd seen a big city, Atlanta. We'd seen Montgomery, the capital city, all about the Civil War and civil rights. We'd seen Selma, a smaller town, caught in the throes of segregation. Birmingham, completely different situation. Birmingham had never even been founded at the time of the Civil War. So all those Civil War memorials that we saw in Montgomery were gone from Birmingham. Instead, Birmingham had installed a different kind of public memory.
Birmingham was really kind of, it enlivened sort of like a, the knowledge that I have of the civil rights movement, maybe from the very beginning when I first started learning about it. Kids being hosed, the dogs attacking people, that's kind of the images I have in my mind from the civil rights movement. As we got deeper and deeper into the trip, I feel like it became something that none of us could have expected. I just remember thinking on the bus one time, this isn't what I expected anymore, it's even better, and I'm just gonna go with it. I'm not gonna try and make any plans, not gonna try and guess what comes next. I'm just gonna experience it.
Before the trip, I knew Michaela, Brianna, and Cameron in the class. That's 3 students out of, I think we had close to 20, yeah. And by the end of the trip, I'm pretty sure I can say that I know a good deal about each of the students in the class, and I think that they're all my friends.
After the trip, I can say that some of my best friends are in the class.
I felt like I just got so close to people just by sharing these personal experiences and just sort of by thinking through, you know, like intellectual questions with people. And coming back, I was sad to leave everybody.
You really got to know everyone because it's like this is your spring break and we're all together and we were going through these really tough times together. Everything that happened, we were together, we were a unit. And I just feel like we created a very, very special bond.
We had a bunch of students in the class who had met each other before, they had gone to school before. Maybe a couple of them were friendly to each other. By the end of the trip, we had a real community, a bond among us all, a sense of friendships that I think are going to extend for a long time.